I met her on a dating app, and our first date seemed perfect. But little did I know, she was hiding a dark secret that would change my life forever. As I sat at home, scrolling through my phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and nervousness. I had been on my fair share of bad dates, but there was something about Sarah that caught my attention. Her profile picture was a stunning photo of her smiling brightly, with piercing green eyes that seemed to sparkle with warmth. Her bio was brief but intriguing, mentioning her love for adventure, hiking, and trying new restaurants. I was sold. I swiped right, and to my surprise, she matched me almost instantly. We started chatting, exchanging messages about everything from our favorite TV shows to our childhood memories. I was smitten. We talked for hours, laughing and joking like we had known each other for years. I found myself wanting to know more about her, to learn about her passions and interests. She seemed so genuine and down to earth, and I couldn't help but feel a connection. As the night wore on, our conversation turned more serious. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, and I was struck by her ambition and drive. She was a free spirit, always chasing her passions and never afraid to take risks. I was captivated by her energy and enthusiasm, and before I knew it, the night had slipped away. We made plans for our first date, and I couldn't wait to see her in person. I was a little nervous, but mostly excited. I picked her up from her apartment, and she looked stunning in a red dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. We headed out to a trendy restaurant in the city, and the atmosphere was lively and fun. But as we sat down to order, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She seemed distracted, preoccupied with her phone, and barely responding to my questions. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just having a bad day. But as the night wore on, her behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up late to the restaurant, apologizing profusely but seeming almost rehearsed. Our conversations felt forced, like we were trying to recite lines from a script rather than having a genuine conversation. I started to feel uneasy, like something was not quite right. Despite the awkwardness, I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something special about her. Maybe it was the way she laughed, or the way she smiled when she talked about her passions. Maybe it was the way she seemed to light up when we talked about our shared interests. Whatever it was, I was drawn to her like a magnet. I found myself wanting to see her again, to learn more about her, and to explore this connection we had. But as the night drew to a close, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Something wasn't quite right, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. As I walked her back to her apartment, the tension between us was palpable. We stood outside her door, awkwardly trying to wrap up the evening. I leaned in to kiss her goodnight, but she hesitated, her eyes darting back and forth like a trapped animal. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything changed. She smiled, her eyes sparkling with a mischievous glint. "Want to come in and see my place?" she asked, her voice low and sultry. I hesitated, feeling a sense of trepidation. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way she seemed to be leading me deeper into her apartment, further and further away from the safety of the night air. Or maybe it was the way she seemed to be watching me, her eyes never leaving mine as we stepped inside. Whatever it was, I knew that I was in for a night that would change my life forever. As the days went by, Sarah seemed like the perfect girlfriend. We'd spend hours talking about our favorite books, movies, and music, and I couldn't help but feel like I'd known her my whole life. She was always on time, and her punctuality was something that I admired about her. In fact, I remember one time when I was running a bit behind schedule, and she texted me to make sure everything was okay. At first, I thought it was cute, but as time went on, I started to notice that she was avoiding certain topics in our conversations. Whenever I'd try to steer the conversation towards her past, she'd quickly change the subject or make a joke to deflect my questions. I brushed it off as nerves, thinking that maybe she was just shy or didn't want to talk about certain things. But deep down, I was starting to feel uneasy. It was as if she was hiding something behind a mask of normalcy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I tried to push the thought aside and focus on the positive aspects of our relationship. After all, we were having a great time together, and I didn't want to ruin things by being paranoid. One day, we were out at a coffee shop, and I decided to take a chance and ask her about her family. I figured it was a safe topic, and maybe we could even bond over our shared experiences. But as soon as I brought it up, she clammed up and told me that she didn't really like talking about her family. I tried to reassure her that it was okay, that we could talk about anything, but she just smiled and changed the subject. I was taken aback by her reaction, and for a moment, I felt like I'd stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to see. But I didn't want to pry, so I let it drop and moved on to a different conversation. As we continued to talk, I couldn't help but notice that she seemed a bit off. Her laughter seemed forced, and her smile seemed to falter for just a second before she recovered. It was then that I started to wonder if maybe I was wrong about her. Maybe she wasn't the perfect girlfriend after all. Maybe there was something more to her that I wasn't seeing. And as I looked into her eyes, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. Something was off, and I wasn't sure what it was. As we finished our coffee and prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I had to be careful. I started to wonder if I'd made a mistake by trusting her so easily, and if I was now in over my head. As we walked out of the coffee shop, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Something was brewing beneath the surface, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. But I was determined to get to the bottom of things, no matter what it took. And that's when I started to notice the little things. The way she'd glance over her shoulder, the way she'd quickly check her phone, the way she'd whisper into it when we were in public. It was as if she was constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for something to happen. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but deep down, I knew that something was off. And as I looked into her eyes, I saw a flicker of something there that made my heart skip a beat. It was a look of fear, of anxiety, of something that made me wonder if I was in over my head. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I had to be careful. I was starting to feel like I was trapped in a nightmare, and I wasn't sure how to wake up. But I was determined to get to the truth, no matter what it took. And as I looked into her eyes, I knew that I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. But little did I know, the truth was far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. And as I delved deeper into Sarah's secret, I would discover a world of darkness and deception that would change my life forever. One night, I stumbled upon a shocking discovery that made me realize I had been living with a monster. It was a quiet evening, just me and my laptop, when I decided to snoop through Sarah's phone, something I'd been putting off for a while. I know it sounds intrusive, but my gut had been telling me that something wasn't right, and I couldn't shake that feeling. As I scrolled through her messages, a strange email caught my eye. It was from a sender I'd never seen before, and the subject line made my heart skip a beat. "Welcome to the game." I clicked on it, feeling a mix of curiosity and unease. The email was cryptic, but it seemed to be inviting Sarah to some sort of online community. My mind racing, I decided to dig deeper. I searched the web for any information about the email sender or the website it linked to, and that's when I stumbled upon it. A website with a name that made my blood run cold. It was a platform for people to engage in unusual games, to say the least. I won't go into too much detail, but let's just say that the content on that website was disturbing. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized that Sarah was involved with this twisted community. The more I dug, the more I uncovered, and it was like peeling back layers of an onion to reveal a truth that I never wanted to see. Sarah's normal facade began to crumble in my mind like a house of cards. I remembered all the times she'd been late for our dates, all the times she'd forgotten to call me back. It all made sense now. She was always juggling multiple lives, and I was just one of her many pawns. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so oblivious to the truth. Sarah was a master manipulator, and I'd fallen hook, line, and sinker. The days we spent together, the laughter, the conversations, it was all a ruse. A cleverly crafted illusion designed to keep me in the dark. As I continued to dig, I found more evidence of Sarah's involvement with this twisted community. It was like uncovering a dark secret, one that I never wanted to see. The more I learned, the more I realized that I'd been living with a stranger all along. A stranger who had been hiding in plain sight, pretending to be someone she wasn't. I felt a sense of horror wash over me, a sense of dread that I'd never felt before. I thought about all the times I'd trusted her, all the times I'd confided in her. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare, a dream that I couldn't wake up from. And in that moment, I knew I had to get out. I had to escape the toxic relationship that I'd been trapped in. But as I looked around my apartment, I realized that I was still trapped. I was still living with a monster that I thought I'd known. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't alone. There were others out there like me, people who had been manipulated, people who had been deceived. And I knew I had to share my story, to warn them, to protect them. But that's a story for another time. For now, I'm left with this haunting feeling, this sense of unease that I'll never be able to shake. I'm left wondering how many others are out there, living in the dark, living with monsters that they think they know. And I'm left with one question: what's next? As I delved deeper into Sarah's secrets, I discovered a web of deceit that went far beyond what I could have ever imagined. It started with a simple phone call from my best friend, who'd been talking to Sarah on and off for a few weeks. He'd been warning me about her, saying she seemed too perfect, too good to be true. I brushed it off as mere jealousy, but little did I know that my friend had stumbled upon something that would change everything. He told me about a post Sarah had made on a social media platform, where she was pretending to be a 25-year-old graphic designer, looking for a serious relationship. But here's the thing. She was 32 years old and had been involved in a series of catfishing scams, where she would pretend to be someone else to lure men into her trap. My mind was reeling as I tried to process this information. How could someone I thought I knew, someone I'd spent countless hours with, be capable of something so deceitful? But that was just the tip of the iceberg. As I dug deeper, I discovered that Sarah was involved in some twisted relationships with other men. She'd been playing them all along, using her charm and beauty to manipulate them into doing her bidding. And I was just one of her many victims, a pawn in her game of cat and mouse. I felt like I'd been living in a dream world where nothing was as it seemed. I remembered all the times Sarah would talk about her friends and her family, but it turned out that they were all just fabricated personas, created to make her seem more interesting. She'd even gone so far as to create a fake online profile, complete with fake photos and a made-up backstory. It was like she was living two separate lives, and I was just a part of her fantasy world. As I looked back on our relationship, I realized that every red flag I'd ignored, every warning sign I'd dismissed, had been a sign of something much darker. The way she'd always be late to our dates, the way she'd always be vague about her past, it all made sense now. She was a master manipulator, and I was just one of her many conquests. But what really got me was the way she'd been playing me. She'd been using me to get to other people, to get to their money and their trust. It was like I was just a means to an end, a stepping stone in her twisted game of cat and mouse. And I had to admit, it was a hard pill to swallow. I thought I knew Sarah, but it turned out that I didn't know her at all. As I sat there, trying to process everything I'd just learned, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anger and betrayal. How could someone I trusted so much turn out to be such a deceitful monster? But as I looked deeper into my own flaws, I realized that I'd been complicit in her game. I'd ignored the warning signs, I'd dismissed the red flags, and I'd let myself get hurt. It was a hard lesson to learn, but it was one that I needed to learn. And as I looked back on our relationship, I realized that I'd been living in a state of denial. I'd been so caught up in the fantasy of our relationship that I'd ignored the reality of her true nature. But now, with the truth finally out, I could see things for what they were. And it was a hard, bitter pill to swallow. But even as I struggled to come to terms with everything, I knew that I had to move on. I had to take control of my life and stop letting Sarah's manipulations dictate my emotions. It was a hard road to follow, but it was one that I knew I had to take. And as I looked to the future, I knew that I'd come out stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. As I tried to distance myself from Sarah, I realized that she was not going to let me go without a fight. It was as if she had a sixth sense, always knowing where I was and who I was with. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the messages started pouring in, sending chills down my spine. I started receiving threatening messages and gifts from an unknown number, making me feel like I was being watched. It was a constant reminder that Sarah was out there, waiting for me to slip up. The messages were always cryptic, but the tone was unmistakable, a mix of anger and desperation. I tried to brush it off as mere harassment, but deep down, I knew it was something more. But it wasn't until I saw her stalking me in public that I realized the true extent of her obsession. I was out with friends at a local cafe, laughing and joking around, when I caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye. She was sitting across the street, staring at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I tried to ignore her, but she wouldn't look away. It was as if she was waiting for me to acknowledge her, to validate her existence. I felt like I was living in a horror movie, where the stalker was always one step ahead of me. Every move I made, every decision I took, was being monitored and analyzed. I started to feel like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, with no escape in sight. The messages, the gifts, the stalking, it was all becoming too much to bear. I began to wonder if I had ever really known Sarah at all. Was she the sweet, charming woman I thought I was dating? Or was she just a master manipulator, playing me like a pawn in her twisted game? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been blind to the warning signs. I had ignored the red flags, the subtle hints that something was off. As I looked around the cafe, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. Was she watching me now, waiting for me to make another move? I glanced around the room, but she was nowhere to be seen. For a moment, I thought I had finally escaped her grasp, but then I saw her, lurking in the shadows, her eyes fixed intently on me. That's when it hit me. I was in grave danger. Sarah was not just a stalker. She was a predator, and I was her prey. I knew then that I had to take drastic measures to protect myself, to get out of this nightmare before it was too late. But as I turned to leave, I felt a hand on my arm, a gentle touch that sent shivers down my spine. "You can't escape me," a low, menacing voice whispered in my ear. I spun around, but there was no one there. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I knew then that I was trapped in a living hell with no way out. After weeks of terror, I finally decided to go to the police and report Sarah's stalking. I had been trying to brush it off as my imagination, but deep down I knew that I wasn't crazy. The evidence was piling up, from the constant phone calls to the late-night visits to my apartment. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the police station with a mix of anxiety and relief. I had been dreading this moment for so long, but I knew it was the only way to get help. The officer behind the counter looked up at me with a sympathetic expression, but I could tell he was skeptical. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone neutral. I took a deep breath and began to explain, showing him the evidence I had collected. The phone records, the security footage, the notes she'd left on my car. He listened attentively, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. I could see the skepticism melting away, replaced by a sense of determination. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded. "Okay, let's get to work," he said, his voice firm. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the officer led me to a small room to fill out a report. It was a relief to know that I was finally safe, but I knew that Sarah was still out there, waiting for her next victim. As I sat in the room, filling out the paperwork, I couldn't help but think about the other men who had been targeted by Sarah. They were all strangers to me, but I had heard their stories through the police. Men who had been stalked, harassed, and terrorized by Sarah's relentless pursuit. It was a chilling reminder that I wasn't alone, that there were others out there who had suffered at her hands. I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that I had been so focused on my own safety that I had forgotten about them. But now, with the police involved, I knew that I had a responsibility to help bring Sarah to justice. I was no longer just a victim, I was a partner in the investigation. The officer returned with a detective who introduced himself as Mike. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, with a sharp mind and a keen eye for detail. He listened intently as I recounted my story, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. "I want you to know that we're going to do everything we can to catch Sarah and bring her to justice," he said, his voice firm. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me, knowing that I was finally in good hands. But as I left the police station, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a whole new level of danger. Sarah was still out there, waiting for her next move, and I knew that I was just the beginning. Looking back, I realized that I was blinded by my desire for love and connection, but I learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of online dating and the importance of trusting my instincts. It's funny, I used to think that online dating was the way to go, a chance to meet new people and potentially find someone special. But now, I see it for what it is, a breeding ground for predators like Sarah. I will never forget the terror I experienced at the hands of Sarah, but I will also never let it define me. It's like I've been given a second chance, a chance to start over and be more cautious. I've been thinking a lot about what I could have done differently, and I've come to the realization that I was so caught up in the excitement of it all that I ignored the warning signs. The first time I met Sarah, she seemed normal. She was charming, funny, and had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world. But looking back, I see that she was just playing a role that she had perfected over time. She was like a chameleon, adapting to her surroundings and manipulating people to get what she wanted. I remember the first time she started to show her true colors. We were on a date, and she suddenly became possessive and jealous. She started questioning me about my past, my friends, and my family. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but deep down I knew that something was off. And then there were the gifts. She would show up at my doorstep with flowers and chocolates, but it was like she was trying to buy my affection. I want to share my story with others so they can learn from my mistakes and stay safe online. I know that I'm not alone, and that there are countless people out there who have experienced similar situations. I want to be a voice for them, a voice that says, I see you, I hear you, and I believe you. We need to create a community where people feel safe sharing their stories and seeking help. If you're reading this, please be careful when meeting people online and always trust your instincts. You never know who might be lurking in the shadows. Don't let your desire for love and connection cloud your judgment. Take things slow, ask questions, and pay attention to red flags. And most importantly, remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. It's like I said, I will never forget the terror I experienced at the hands of Sarah, but I will also never let it define me. I'm stronger now, and I'm determined to use my experience to help others. I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor, and I'm here to tell my story.